Identity creates reality. Before a person ever experiences success, they first see themselves as successful. Before they ever rise out of a struggle, they first stop identifying with being stuck. The world outside of you is simply a mirror of what's happening inside of you. You can't keep saying, "I'm not enough," and expect to attract abundance. You can't keep identifying as broken and expect to live whole. Every thought you repeat about yourself becomes a seed, and those seeds eventually grow into the fruit you live with. If you want to change what's happening around you, you have to change what you believe about you. When a person calls themselves a failure long enough, life will start confirming it. They'll miss opportunities, sabotage relationships, and call it bad luck, not realizing their identity is shaping every outcome. It's not because they aren't talented. It's because their mind won't allow them to rise higher than how they see themselves. You cannot outperform your self-image. That's why people can get new jobs, new partners, new environments, but still repeat the same story. The problem isn't the situation. It's the identity they bring into it. The human spirit was never designed to live by labels. Yet, most people spend their lives wearing the names others gave them rejected, poor, average, unwanted. And the longer they hold on to those names, the harder it becomes to see their true reflection. The enemy of destiny is not a lack of opportunity, it's a lack of identity. When you forget who you are, you settle for what's available instead of what's possible. You tolerate situations that insult your potential because deep down you don't believe you deserve better. But when you shift your identity, your entire life begins to rearrange itself. A person who starts believing they are disciplined begins acting differently without forcing it. A person who sees themselves as valuable stops accepting less than respect. You don't change your life by changing your behavior first. You change your behavior by changing your belief about who you are. The new identity creates new patterns, and those patterns create new results. That's why transformation feels spiritual, because it is. It's not just about affirmations or motivation. It's about revelation. The moment you see yourself differently, everything connected to you must adjust. People who once looked down on you will sense something has shifted. You'll walk into the same spaces, but you won't walk the same way. That quiet confidence doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from awareness. You begin to live from truth instead of from trauma. Think about it when you believe you are a creator, you start creating. When you believe you are chosen, you stop competing. When you believe you are abundant, you stop chasing what's already within you. Reality bends to identity because identity sets the standard for what you expect. What you tolerate reveals what you think you deserve. Every limitation that once seemed unbreakable starts losing power when your identity expands beyond it. The reason most people never change is because they're trying to do it backwards. They're trying to change what they do without changing who they are. You can't maintain the habits of a millionaire with the mindset of a victim. You can't walk in authority while still identifying as powerless. Until you rewrite the story, you tell yourself every success will feel temporary. You'll keep running back to comfort because your old identity won't allow you to stay in higher places. The truth is, life doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you believe you are. If you see yourself as limited, you'll unconsciously create situations that keep you small. If you see yourself as capable, you'll rise even when circumstances push against you. It's not magic, it's alignment. When identity and intention line up, power flows naturally. You start to attract what matches your internal frequency. Every person walking the earth is a reflection of what they believe about themselves. Two people can face the same challenge, yet one grows from it while the other crumbles. The difference isn't the situation, it's the identity that meets it. That's why self-discovery is the foundation of elevation. You cannot walk in dominion until you first remember your design. You cannot possess the promise until you believe you're worthy to receive it. The moment you start seeing yourself through the lens of greatness, your reality will start responding to that vision. The shift won't happen overnight, but it will happen inevitably, because reality is simply the echo of identity. It repeats what you say about yourself until you say something new. You are not what you've been through. The things that happened to you were real, but they were never meant to become your definition. Life has a way of marking people: disappointment, betrayal, loss, failure. All of it leaves fingerprints on the soul. But those marks are not your identity. They are chapters, not the entire story. Too many people confuse their experiences with their essence. They say, "I am broken," when in truth, they only feel broken. They say, "I am a failure," when in reality, they simply experience failure. There's a difference between what happened to you and what's happening in you. When you carry your past as your identity, you build walls around your own potential. You start making decisions not from vision, but from fear. You protect yourself from pain, but also block yourself from growth. You think you're staying safe, but you're actually staying stuck. The past becomes a prison disguised as comfort. The mind replays old pain like a movie, convincing you that you'll always be the same person who went through that moment. But you're not the person who got hurt. You're the one who survived it. Every scar you carry is proof that you made it out, not proof that you're still there. The truth is, pain was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. Every challenge you've endured has been shaping something in you: strength, wisdom, resilience. The problem is, most people stop in the middle of the process. They let bitterness settle where healing was supposed to grow. They let shame build roots where understanding was meant to take place. But the pain was never the destination, it was the preparation. The past came to introduce you to your power, not to imprison you in your pain. So many people live with a false identity created by trauma. They've accepted names they were never meant to carry. Oh, unworthy. Oh, lovable. Damaged. But those names didn't come from truth. They came from wounds. A wound may speak loud, but it doesn't speak accurately. You are not the version of yourself that got hurt. You are the version that's healing, growing, and awakening. Once you realize that, the past begins to lose its grip. You stop seeing yourself through the lens of what broke you and start seeing yourself through the lens of what's being built in you. The moment you separate who you are from what you've been through, freedom begins. You start understanding that pain is an experience, not an identity. You start to see that the same fire that tried to burn you was actually shaping your foundation. What once felt like destruction begins to look like direction. Sometimes what you call a setback is actually a setup for who you were meant to become. The test wasn't sent to crush you. It was sent to reveal that you can't be crushed. When you stop identifying with pain, you start reclaiming your power. You begin to realize you are not a product of your environment. You are a product of your decisions after the environment tried to define you. You get to decide what your experiences mean. You get to choose whether they make you bitter or better. You get to take the lessons and leave the labels. That's the beauty of free will. No matter what life hands you, you still get to name yourself. Think about how many times you've outgrown things that once felt impossible. You've survived storms that once convinced you they'd never end. You've healed from wounds you thought would never close. That's proof that your past doesn't own you. You just haven't stopped long enough to recognize your progress. Sometimes healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering differently. It's about looking back and seeing strength where you used to see pain. Every experience carries two options: to define you or to develop you. When you let it define you, you stay trapped in the memory. When you let it develop you, you gain mastery over it. The same event can create two different people depending on how they interpret it. The difference between brokenness and breakthrough is identity. You can't always control what happens, but you can always control what it becomes inside of you. That's how transformation begins. By rewriting the meaning of what you've been through. You've got to stop replaying the story of who hurt you and start retelling the story of who you became because of it. You've got to stop letting moments of pain become permanent prisons. Every person who ever did you wrong, every season that tried to break you, every loss that left you empty, none of it disqualified you. It simply prepared you for a version of yourself you hadn't met yet. The real you was never destroyed in the fire, it was revealed through it. When you look at your life through that lens, you start realizing that nothing was wasted. The pain had purpose, the betrayal had lessons, and the loss carried direction. You can't always see it when you're in it, but every wound was pointing you toward awareness. You were being stretched into strength. You were being taught to rely on something deeper than circumstance. You were being reminded that who you are will always be greater than what you've been through. Purpose comes from the Creator. You can't discover true direction until you understand divine intention. Everything that exists was designed with a reason. The stars shine to give light, rivers flow to sustain life, and seeds grow to produce after their kind. Nothing in creation wakes up wondering why it exists except human beings, because we've been given the power to choose whether to align with our purpose or resist it. When you forget the one who created you, you start searching for meaning in things that were never meant to define you. You try to build identity out of status, out of followers, out of money, out of applause, and still feel empty, because purpose cannot be found in performance. It can only be found in connection. The Creator never made anything without intention. Before you ever arrived on this earth, There was already a plan written for your life. That means your existence is not random. You weren't born by accident, you were assigned. Your gifts, your voice, your struggles, even your personality, all of it was designed to fulfill something greater than you. That's why no matter how much success people chase, they still feel a void when their life lacks meaning. You can gain the world and still lose your sense of direction if you're disconnected from the source of it. When you know your purpose comes from the Creator, you stop comparing your journey to others. You realize your path isn't supposed to look like theirs because your assignment isn't the same. Comparison is what happens when you forget who called you. You start measuring your worth by other people's progress, not realizing that purpose doesn't operate on competition. It operates on alignment. You can't walk in peace trying to live someone else's plan. The moment you embrace the uniqueness of your design, you start to feel the power of divine flow. Most people live confused because they're trying to create a purpose that was already given. You can't invent what was already designed. Purpose isn't built, it's discovered. It's uncovered through obedience, through growth, through listening to that quiet voice inside that keeps nudging you towards something greater. The Creator speaks in conviction, in passion, in pull, that deep sense that you were made for more. And when you start following that voice, doors begin to open that logic can't explain. Purpose is the antidote to emptiness. The moment you understand why you were created, distractions lose their power. You stop chasing validation because your mission gives you clarity. People who don't know their purpose waste time trying to please everyone. People who do know their purpose guard their energy because they know every yes has a cost. They live intentionally. They wake up with focus. They stop being busy and start being productive because purpose gives order to your priorities. Even pain has purpose when it's placed in divine context. Sometimes the Creator allows you to walk through darkness not to destroy you, but to develop you. Every setback, every disappointment, every closed door can be a tool used to shape your character for your calling. The problem is when you can't see the purpose, you start cursing the process. You think you're being punished, but you're actually being prepared. The Creator never wastes experience. He uses everything to refine what He placed inside you. When you realize your purpose was authored by the Creator, you stop trying to prove yourself and start trying to align yourself. You stop asking, what do I want to do with my life? And start asking, what was I created to do with my life? That shift changes everything because it's not about personal ambition anymore. It's about divine assignment. That's where peace comes from. When you move in the direction of your calling, even challenges feel meaningful because you know they're connected to something eternal. Purpose doesn't need applause. It needs obedience. You might not always understand the path, but when you trust the one who designed it, you start to move differently. You stop forcing outcomes and start flowing with timing. You stop chasing opportunities and start preparing for them. You learn that purpose unfolds in layers. One step reveals the next. And sometimes the Creator hides the full picture to keep you dependent on His guidance. If you saw the entire plan, you'd try to control it, and control always kills purpose. When you live from purpose, everything you do gains value. The smallest act becomes significant when it's connected to destiny. How you treat people, how you speak, how you give, how you build, all of it becomes a reflection of your understanding that you're representing something bigger than yourself. Purpose adds weight to your words and integrity to your actions. It's what keeps you grounded when success comes and what keeps you moving when life gets heavy. Every great invention, every movement, every act of transformation began with someone who understood they were sent. They stopped living by accident and started living by assignment. They understood that they didn't choose their purpose. They were chosen for it. That's why when you align with your Creator, you don't just find what you're supposed to do, you find who you're supposed to be. Transformation begins with revelation. Real change doesn't start when you get tired of your situation. It starts when you see your situation for what it truly is. You can't change what you don't recognize, and you can't rise above what you still justify. Revelation is the light that exposes the patterns you've been living in, the beliefs you've accepted as truth, and the lies you've been calling normal. It's the moment when the fog lifts and you realize you were never meant to live small, afraid, or limited. Until that light comes on inside of you, every attempt to change will feel like a cycle. You'll keep trying to fix what you were never supposed to carry. The human mind can adjust to dysfunction so well that it starts calling bondage balance. You learn to live with fear and call it wisdom. You learn to tolerate mediocrity and call it peace. Revelation interrupts that. It breaks the illusion. It forces you to face the truth about who you've become, not to shame you, but to awaken you. When truth confronts you, it doesn't come to condemn, it comes to correct. It shows you that the cage was never locked, it was just familiar. Revelation doesn't just change what you see, it changes how you see. Transformation is not behavior modification, it's identity restoration. You can change your habits and still be the same person inside. You can discipline yourself for a season and still fall back because your perspective never shifted. But once revelation hits your spirit, you can't go back to living blind. You start realizing that every external change must begin with internal awareness. You stop focusing on fixing the fruit and start tending to the root. Because when the root changes, the fruit can't help but follow. Revelation opens the door to responsibility. The moment you see truth, you can no longer pretend you don't know. You can't unsee it. That's why revelation is powerful. It gives you accountability. You start realizing that your results aren't random. They're reflections. You stop blaming life, people, or circumstances and start asking, what part of me created this? That question is where growth begins. Because the truth that hurts you at first is the same truth that heals you later. Every transformation begins with an uncomfortable awakening. It's rarely convenient. It often exposes pride, fear, and limiting beliefs you didn't even know you had. But that discomfort is sacred. It's the stretching of your soul to make room for a higher version of yourself. Revelation challenges every false identity you've been living under. It shows you where you've been playing small, where you've been compromising, and where you've been hiding from your own greatness. The pain of that awareness is what gives birth to power. When revelation comes, you stop asking life to change and start changing the lens through which you see it. You realize that problems aren't punishments. They're patterns meant to be understood. You begin to see every situation as a mirror showing you something about yourself. The more you understand, the freer you become. You start transforming from reaction to creation, from being shaped by circumstances to shaping them. You no longer live as a victim of what happens. You live as a steward of what's possible. Revelation doesn't just expose what's wrong, it reminds you of what's right within you. It reconnects you with truth, that you are capable, that you are chosen, that you are equipped for more. When your eyes open to who you really are, you start walking with a different posture. You speak differently, think differently, choose differently. The world around you hasn't changed yet, but something inside you has, and that shift begins to move everything else into alignment. Transformation through revelation is permanent because it rewrites your perspective, not just your performance. You don't have to force change when you finally understand who you are. You no longer strive for validation. You start living from awareness. That's why some people evolve so quickly. Not because they worked harder, but because they saw clearer. One moment of divine clarity can do more than years of effort without understanding. Revelation gives you direction where effort alone only gives exhaustion. The process of transformation requires humility. You have to be willing to admit that what you thought was truth might have been limitation. You have to let go of what's familiar to embrace what's real. Revelation dismantles your ego before it builds your elevation. It pulls down the walls you built for protection and shows you that those walls were also blocking your progress. It's a holy unlearning, a stripping away of false beliefs to make room for divine wisdom. The moment you surrender to that process, transformation becomes natural. Everything you desire to become is already within you. But revelation is the key that unlocks it. It's not something you earn, it's something you receive. It's that inner awakening when your spirit finally catches up with what was true about you all along. The day you see yourself clearly is the day you stop fighting against your own destiny. You realize that change isn't something you chase. It's something you awaken to. And once you see, you can never go back to being blind.